Alright guys, welcome back to Helio Sports World once again, and welcome to the new video. And of course we are on the back of a couple of big weeks in the UFC's heavyweight division, with Tom Aspinall getting the first big win in the heavyweight division when he reigned supreme over Alexander Volkov a couple of weeks ago at UFC London. And of course, this past weekend you had Curtis Blaze doing the unthinkable at UFC Columbus and proving all his doubters wrong when he knocked out Chris Daukaus. Yes, that's right. Curtis Blades went out and shut Daukaus' lights off, and not just wrestle him for the majority of the fight like many people predicted him to. But yeah, a lot of stuff happening at the top of the UFC's heavyweight division, and I hope that the UFC matchmakers are equally invested into this movement in the top of the UFC's heavyweight division right now, and I hope we get to see a lot of fresh matchups going forward. So yeah, I'll be taking a look into the landscape of this UFC heavyweight division right now, and what I feel could turn out to be the best potential fights from here onwards, on the back of UFC London and on the back of UFC Columbus. So without any further ado, let's get straight into this video. Welcome back to Helio Sports World, and yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so first things first, I'll quickly go through the current UFC heavyweight standings, which look something like this at the moment. You have Francis Ngannou, who's obviously the heavyweight champion right now, and then you have Gane, who's on the back of a fight against the champion. Despite losing to Ngannou, Gane is still ranked as the number one contender. Then you have former champion Stipe Miocic, who's at number two, followed by the sensational Tuivasa. I mean, what an incredible turnaround he has had in the UFC from almost being on the verge of being cut by the UFC to securing 5 wins in a row, and doing all that by TKO or KO is an incredible achievement in itself. So moving on, we have Curtis Blades, who's sitting at number 4. No changes for him in the rankings despite the win over Chris Daukaus. Derek Lewis, a former title challenger and still a huge fan favorite, who has now gone down to 5th, followed by Tom Aspinall, who's currently at number 6. Then you have Alexander Volkov, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Chris Daukaus, and Marcin Tybura, who complete our top 10 in the UFC's heavyweight division. Now, let's start off at the top of the division. I think the most exciting fight that the UFC could book right now is a potential showdown between Tom Aspinall and Tuivasa, of course. I think it makes the most sense, especially that Aspinall has also called for the fight, and to think that both men have such great fan following, this fight could easily sell out any arena in the UK or in Australia, or maybe in the US as well. But I believe in terms of being a fan favorite fight, Aspinall versus Tuivasa is what the UFC should aim for next, and the winner of that fight could easily get one step closer to a potential title shot in the future. I mean, there are high chances that someone or the other is going to get knocked out in that fight. Tuivasa has that absolutely explosive power, and I believe he also proved how solid his chin really is in that last fight against Derek Lewis. At one point in that fight, it almost seemed as if Tuivasa was about to get knocked out by the Black Beast, but incredible resilience from him, and he went on to secure that second round win with that vicious elbow. Aspinall, not only does he have great power, but which he showcased in his fight against Sergey Spivak, if you remember, but his wrestling is quite tremendous as well. Aspinall is very good at controlling the fight on the ground. So clearly, as of right now, I would favor Tom Aspinall to beat Tuivasa if they ever cross paths in the future. But nevertheless, a potential Aspinall versus Tuivasa fight needs to happen, like I said, in the UK or maybe in Australia. That is how this fight will get that big fight feel if it happens in Aspinall's backyard, so to speak. So yeah, first fight in the books, Tom Aspinall versus Tuivasa. Get it done, UFC. Book that fight ASAP. Okay, so next up you have the number one contender, Gane, who, as I mentioned, is on the back of a loss to the champion from his last fight. Then you have the number 2 ranked Stipe Miocic, former champion, who is also on the back of a loss to Francis Ngannou, having dropped the UFC heavyweight title to the Predator. Now, I know everyone has been calling for a fight between Stipe Miocic and John Jones, but as of right now, I just don't see Jones making his debut at heavyweight anytime soon. And honestly, I don't even know what's the deal with him right now. We saw him get in trouble with the law not too long ago, and Dana White himself had previously said that he expects Jones to make his debut at heavyweight in sometime in 2023, I believe. So yeah, if that is indeed the case, then of course the possibility of Jones versus Miocic is automatically ruled out for the time being. Hence, I do think that Gane versus Miocic is the fight to be booked. Not only is that a very intriguing matchup stylistically, but I think it makes the most sense when you have the number one and number two ranked fighters in the division who are on the back of losses to the champion from their last fight. Now, realistically, there are a few potential scenarios that we could get from a Cyril Gane versus Stipe Miocic fight, and a victory for Cyril Gane here wouldn't necessarily guarantee a title shot for him right afterwards, as he only lost to Ngannou in his last fight and was pretty much dominated for the majority of round number 3, 4, and 5. Um, I do think that Gane would have to get that second win in a row in order to get himself back into title contention, regardless of whoever the champion is by that point. Hence, if Gane is victorious over Miocic, the fight to be booked from there onwards has to be the one between Cyril Gane and the winner of Tom Aspinall and Tai Tuivasa. And as much as I absolutely love Tuivasa, a fight between Aspinall versus Gane would be a dream matchup, I believe. I mean, Aspinall himself has made it clear that he would be willing to fight Gane once he gets past Tuivasa. So yeah, Gane, if Gane goes on to beat Miocic, him versus Aspinall, I would say turns out to be the number one contender in the contender fight in the heavyweight division. But of course, I'm not ruling out the possibility of Gane versus Tuivasa as well. But if you ask me, I just don't think that's a good fight for Tuivasa stylistically. I just think that Gane's not going to allow Tuivasa to find any sort of openings if they ever fought. So he can just so Tuivasa could just use his one punch knockout power, and Gane could very well use his solid wrestling to dominate Tuivasa on the ground as well. However, what happens if Stipe Miocic is victorious over Cyril Gane? Does he need to get that second win in a row to in order to get that title shot? I don't think it does. Miocic, he has already proved himself to be the best heavyweight champion in recent history, and maybe of all time as well. And instead of getting an immediate rematch, he now has to go through that one top contender in order to get back into title contention. And we're talking about a title that he has already held twice in the past. Let me tell you that. So yeah, a win over former interim champion like Gane should be enough for Miocic to get that title shot. Now, the final and third scenario that could emerge from this, let us not forget that Francis Ngannou's UFC contract situation is still up in the air. We do not know if Ngannou is going to sign a new deal with the UFC or not for some reason. I do believe that there are high chances of Ngannou waving the UFC goodbye. However, considering Dana White's business ideas and everything, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to become a co-promoter in a potential Ngannou versus Tyson Fury fight, boxing matchup. That is, much like he did for Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. I mean, there is a lot of money to be made from a potential Ngannou versus Fury fight, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dana White somehow gets himself involved in that scenario as well. Anyway, if Francis Ngannou goes on to leave the UFC, I do think Miocic versus Gane will be contested for the vacant UFC Heavyweight Championship. I mean, that absolutely would be the case if Francis leaves the UFC and vacates the title. And whoever walks out with the belt between those two guys is definitely fighting either Tom Aspinall or Tai Tuivasa. I mean, of course, the UFC will lose one of their biggest stars, one of their biggest fighters in the form of Francis Ngannou, but they are going to get some really, really exciting matchups out from this scenario that I just outlined. So yeah, Stipe Miocic versus Cyril Gane, I would say, is the fight to make right at the top of the UFC heavyweight division right now, regardless of the circumstances surrounding this fight. And I personally would love to see this matchup. All right, so the number one, two, three, and six ranked fighters in the heavyweight division are now out of the equation. Now the remaining fighters are ranked at number four and five. Then you have 7 to 10. Now, the number four ranked fighter in the right now in the heavyweight division is Curtis Blades, who is on the back of a win over Chris Daukaus, and then you have Derek Lewis, who of course lost to Tai Tuivasa in his last fight, but also did beat Daukaus not too long ago. But of course, the UFC obviously cannot and won't book Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis 2 at the moment, knowing that Blades knocked him out last year. So yeah, what does the UFC do with Curtis Blades? Realistically, Blades should go on to fight the loser of Miocic versus Gane following Blades' recent win. He, of course, called for a fight against Cyril Gane, if you guys didn't know. And in a post-fight interview that he did, Blades mentioned that he would like to fight the former interim champion. And at UFC Columbus, Blades, of course, respectfully called out Stipe Miocic, who was sitting at cage side. So yeah, it's really as simple as that. You book Curtis Blades against the loser of Miocic versus Gane, and stylistically, we are going to get two really good matchups. I mean, Blades versus Gane should be a solid fight, and the same goes for Miocic versus Blades as well. It isn't necessarily going to be the typical striker versus wrestler matchup, knowing that both Gane and Miocic also have a lot to offer on the ground as well. And as for Derek Lewis, I think he shouldn't be fighting anyone who's currently top ranked at the moment. I mean, as much as I would love for Lewis to fight the likes of Tom Aspinall and Stipe Miocic, I think as of right now, given that Lewis only just lost to Tai Tuivasa in his last fight, the Black Beast should fight the winner of Jairzinho Rosenstrike and Marcin Tybura. Rosenstrike ranked at number 8, Tybura ranked at number 10, and if you guys didn't know by now, Rosenstrike and Tybura will be kickstarting the UFC 273 prelims, which is in a few weeks, of course. So yeah, a fight against Rosenstrike would make the most sense for the Black Beast. In this scenario, you have two fighters on whom you could rely to put together an explosive, typical striking matchup at heavyweight, where you know that one fighter or the other is at a constant risk of getting knocked out at any moment, and knowing that Rosenstrike will be ranked at number 8, is ranked at number 8, Lewis doesn't really have to fight one of the more lower ranked fighters if he instead fought Tybura, who is at 10. But of course, that all depends on who walks out with a win at UFC 273. So yeah, quickly to round off this UFC heavyweight division video, you of course have Alexander Volkov. We are not sure what's next for him in this division. He has obviously fought and beaten Tybura when these guys fought last year at UFC 267. So Volkov maybe could go on and fight Chris Daukaus, but personally, I just don't want to see Daukaus continue to fight at heavyweight. I do believe he needs to drop down to light heavyweight if he wants to find success going forward. I just think that Daukaus is a little undersized for the heavyweight division. So yeah, the UFC instead could choose to book Alexander Volkov against Sergey Pavlovich. I mean, Pavlovich looked really good at UFC London, another heavyweight who stood out recently in this division, and another fight between two Russian heavyweights. Personally, I would love for the UFC to sort of try and push Pavlovich forward. I do think he has some serious knockout power and could turn out to be a huge threat in this division, like a potential dark horse, so to speak. So yeah, the final round off looks something like this. You have Stipe Miocic versus Cyril Gane at the top of the division. Then you have Tai Tuivasa versus Tom Aspinall in a fight that absolutely needs to happen next. Curtis Blades versus the loser of Stipe Miocic versus Cyril Gane. Derek Lewis versus the winner of Jairzinho Rosenstrike and Marcin Tybura. Alexander Volkov versus Chris Daukaus if Daukaus decides to stay at heavyweight, or Volkov versus Sergey Pavlovich, who is ranked at number 11. So yeah, that's my take on the UFC's heavyweight division, and I'm fairly confident that we are going to see one or two fights get booked from this matchmaking plan that I sort of just outlined. And yeah, really exciting times in the heavyweight division. So yeah, you guys let me know which fights you would like to see in take place in the heavyweight division in the near future. And yeah, till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Drop a like and hit that subscribe button. Till next time, peace.